Good. Welcome to Lansing Online News, and this is Lansing Online News Radio at LCC Radio, WLNZ, here in Lansing, Michigan. I am Bonnie Buckaroo, soon to be joined by my co-host Bill Castanier. And Bill, are you and I going to go down to Shooticon over the weekend at the Lansing
I'm going to
Center?
be there because I'll be at the book sale also. So I'm looking forward to it.
Now, the book sale is
You'll
one
have
day.
to tell people what Shooticon is, though.
Yes, but the Shooticon is a 3-day
Right,
convention.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
And it's 9 to 6 every day, and then they have special events on Friday night and Saturday night. And it is Japanese manga, anime, all of that kind of thing. People dress up in costumes. There's dealer trade shows. You get to watch some of the videos. You get to play some of the games. They have a costume contest where people are going to dress like the video game Dragon Ball. And so they're all going to be in costume and judged by people who do this. And it's a pretty intense and very serious group of people that are really in love with that form of animation.
You know what I noticed too is they've got an art gallery up of some of the dealers, and it's beautiful art.
It is, isn't it?
It's really nice, and it's a lot of things you'll recognize and didn't know where it came from.
Right, yeah, the whole World of Warcraft backgrounds, all of that kind of thing. They're just gorgeous. It is. I mean, it's gone a long way since the days of Pong, so. I don't know if they'll do an homage to Pong.
We got a free Pong with I think with a dishwasher once or
Did
something.
you?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, wow.
Pong, pong, pong.
Yeah, not exactly the most daunting game I've ever played.
No.
Although I did devote my life to Legend of Zelda for one whole period of time, yeah, so. But another thing going on is that you were going to tell me a little bit about a new book you were reading about.
Oh, absolutely.
Rosa Parks.
There's a new book on Rosa Parks. It's clearly a biography. It's by Jean Thea Harris, and what it does is follow her life in the South, but at least a half the book is about her time she spent in Detroit, which I think Michigan people will find interesting because people forget that she lived here most of her life, frankly. She came north after the bus strike. She moved here not too long after, in fact, within a year, and she stayed in Detroit with her husband for almost 10 years, almost on welfare. They had no job until she went to work for John Conyers, and she worked for him for about 25 years in his office in Detroit. If anyone's been to the Henry Ford Museum, the original bus is there from the bus strike.
Yes.
And it's kind of very moving. Now, something I learned in this book was that the classic photograph of her sitting in front of a white man, that white man is an AP reporter, and they staged that.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? But I wonder if they would even do that today. I don't think so. It was staged by Life magazine.
Well, that was very controversial when it
Yes.
came out because the ethics of journalism are that you don't, unless you clearly label it as a recreation, and you didn't do recreations until about the 80s or 90s. That would have been considered taboo. So yeah, that was a big deal.
It was a big deal. But one of the things I think it makes clear in the book that this wasn't done by happenstance. This was clearly a planned event in the civil rights movement. It was probably the beginning of the civil rights movements in a lot of ways. It propelled Martin Luther King to the front of the pack. And one of the other things that I learned in the book, and we had a little discussion about this before, is that Rosa Parks was not allowed to have a speaking role at any of the rallies. And that could have been because they wanted to keep that myth alive that she was just a tired worker going home rather than an activist in the civil rights movement.
Right, and I think that, it's the George Washington and the cherry tree kind of fictionalizing and mythologizing about people who are heroes and heroines and putting them, somehow it would cast her in a better light if she was sort of the tired housekeeper with the sore feet who wanted to sit out, than that she was the secretary at the local NAACP chapter, and they've been planning this for a long time.
Yes, and they tried to do it several times, but the individuals they chose to do it did not have sterling backgrounds.
Yeah.
So they just stopped until she decided to become the person that would do it. It was staged.
I think the picture of Obama sitting in that bus that I've seen is probably one of my favorite pictures of him as president. All I can keep wondering about is what was he thinking when he sat there.
I know if that exhibit down at Henry Ford is pretty moving.
I'll bet it is.
It really is. It's got to be one of the more iconic things, clearly in the civil rights movement. But what also I found out, she was friends with Malcolm X.
Mm.
I saw her speak at the Million Man March, which we'll have to talk about sometime, because she was invited there by Louis
Very good.
Farragut. He spoke about 4 hours.
Yeah, he does.
He just talked forever.
I've watched him on C-SPAN at times. You kind
It's
of
like,
go,
what?
nod off about halfway through. I hate to say it, and that's hard when the speech is that incendiary.
And she was short and sweet, and they liked her.
I'll bet they did. I'll
But
bet they
she would
did.
have been one of maybe 50 women that I saw.
Well, speaking of all of these issues, did you see what happened with Google when they put Cesar Chavez on their homepage yesterday instead of something for Easter? Here's the part that bothers me. They haven't had Easter on there since 2001.
Right.
But when they did Chavez this year, somehow that created a big stir. And I dug out some old pictures that I took of Cesar
When he
Chavez.
was here in Lansing.
Yeah, he was here at Farrell Hall
Yep.
over on campus. And that was decades ago. I mean, he did have quite a tie to this community, the great boycotts, all that kind of thing. And so I just thought it was kind of ironic that they didn't care in all those other years, but boy, when Cesar Chavez got on there, all of a sudden everybody
Well,
cared.
look at the strife that was caused when they tried to rename Grand Avenue.
Yeah, yeah. Which I still think of as.
Yeah.
Doesn't it have a little sign above now?
Well, now it's honorary or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
It's really funky.
Right.
Two of my neighbors were the individuals who got all the petitions signed. Two people.
Ah.
They went door to door to door, riding their bicycles all over town. It was very unusual.
Mm.
Didn't have a lot of chatting with them.
Well, I toured Grand River the other day. I went over to Old Town, and I was really delighted. The business district over there is booming. I'm looking forward to the opening of Rio Van Etta's General Store, which I think is a very clever idea. I've been shooting some video there, but I went out on a walking tour, and I went about 2.5 blocks, and I was stunned at how that industrial area that was there has just completely gone away now. There's just nothing there anymore, except quite a bit of litter, unfortunately.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned that it's spring, but it is a that is a bad area of Old Town. There's no question
It
about
is.
that. There's
We need to come up with some answers for that.
vacant lots. The CSX lot. I think you
Yeah.
took a shot of that. Um,
Hot and now is hot and gone.
oh, that place is.
Yeah.
And part of what happens when businesses go out of business, they have no requirements to clean up,
Right.
take care of their property.
There's nobody
They're
there to
just
do so.
gone.
Yeah.
So there's no, and you can't really do anything with that property.
Well, one of the challenges, I think, for modern mature capitalism is what are we going to do with our urban areas? It seems that we're very quick to give major giveaways, as we saw, for example, with the Meyer store that out in my neighborhood didn't collect a property tax on Meyer because it was ostensibly closed, which is strange since I shopped there during that entire period of time. It was just simply being remodeled, so they were given a tax giveaway. Meanwhile, small shopkeepers are really struggling in a lot of places, and it seems to me those are the ones that really need the helping hand.
Yeah, and I read that article and I just shook my head. I thought, wait a minute. They were open during that entire time. They probably lost very little income,
Right.
but they appealed to the tax tribunal and got breaks,
We're giving
significant
away the
breaks.
store, literally and
Yeah.
figuratively, to a lot of larger corporations while small-time shopkeepers are struggling to stay open. And I think we have to rethink what that means. Hmm. But now we're going to segue into another hot topic. We've been talking about all of this intolerance and all of this activism, and we're going to be joined by my friend Susan Maston. She and I are co-presidents of the Lansing Area Now, National Organization of Women, and her friend Andrea Clausen, and they're here to talk tonight about their efforts to try to reform the Boy Scouts. You are on the Boy Scouts. You're going to make changes within the ranks of the Boy. Tell me what the plan is here, Susan.
Well, we're just part of a larger movement. It's actually a worldwide movement. If you look at the World Organization of Scouting Movement, to which the Boy Scouts of America belong, the for a very, very long time, the World Association has been, or sorry, World Organization has been very supportive of the LGBT community, has been against intolerance and discrimination of all sorts. And as recently, actually, as long ago as almost the founding of Boy Scouts, but as recently as 2010, the World Organization came out with a statement that that all organizations are to be in
Accordance with?
accordance with the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
So your issue with the Scouts is that Scout masters and members cannot be openly part of the LGBT community, or they're not allowed to join. Is that right?
That is correct.
That's correct.
And now the Scouts are unfortunately also equal opportunity intolerant of atheists, and they won't let them be Scoutmasters and join. Is that part of your movement as well, or is that a separate issue?
That would be a separate issue.
Okay, so your concern is the LGBT community component, and there's a special activity we were hoping to have on the show, a gentleman who's doing a high-profile activist type activity to try to draw attention to the work that people are doing, trying to get the Scouts to change their charter.
Yes, our friend Dave McGrath out in Idaho Falls is going to be riding his bike 1,400 miles from his home to the headquarters in Irving, Texas, when they
The headquarters of the Boy Scouts?
Yes, when they convene for their meeting in May to vote on, or to vote whether to continue the discriminatory practices in membership or to change the policy in some way or another.
Where's that meeting held? Is that going to be held in Texas?
Yes,
Yes.
it'll be in
Hmm.
Grapevine, Texas.
Now, wasn't there a plan to lift that ban and then it was put on hold until this meeting? Is that what happened in the history, recent history?
They had discussed it, but it was leaked to the press that they were going to propose allowing each charter organization to decide for itself, consistent with its own values. So if you were a member of an open and affirming church and they chartered a Boy Scout unit, they could open their membership up to LGBT
Right.
people. But if you were a member of a Boy Scout troop that belonged to, say, a Catholic church or some other denomination that was more
Are they all
rigid.
church-based?
No, they're not.
Actually, back prior to BSA moving their headquarters to Irving, Texas, and the Supreme Court case, the Dale versus BSA case, over 60% of Boy Scouts troops were chartered by schools, Kiwanis clubs, non-church organizations. That change with the Supreme Court decision in 2000 really altered BSA.
Tell us a little bit about the Supreme Court decision. What did it say?
This is a Supreme Court decision. Dale had been he was an Eagle Scout. He was to be a Scout. He was a Scoutmaster. Help me out with
He brought suit because he wanted.
He had been kicked out of Boy Scouts by the Mount Diablo Council in California. He brought the case originally to the California Supreme Court. They ruled in his favor against BSA. BSA argued that in the Supreme Court that it was a religious organization and therefore private, which the irony of that is that the BSA was chartered in 1916, and the BSA charter never mentions religion, never mentions God, never mentions anything about religion.
Mm.
And looking at the history over time, and especially through the late 70s and on, BSA became much more religiously affiliated than they had been before.
Susan and Andrea, are your children in scouting? Are you Scoutmasters? What is your role with the organization? Are you voting members? Are you on the board?
I'm a mom of 2 scouts, one of whom is a Star Scout in 9th grade, and the other is a second-class Scout in 6th grade, and I am also an assistant Scoutmaster in their troop.
And I have a son who is an Eagle Scout. I am also an assistant scoutmaster in his troop and a merit badge counselor for a number of STEM-related merit badges.
Now, what about the Girl Scouts? Are either of you involved with that organization? That's a separate organization, as I
That's
understand it.
entirely separate, yes, and I don't have daughters.
This,
I've been in
is
scouting for almost, I hate to say this, almost half a century. Started out as a Girl Scout, was actually in high school a member of Explorer Scouts, which is affiliated with Boy Scouts. Um, my daughter was a Girl Scout. I was a Girl Scout leader while she was in Girl Scouts.
they don't have this policy, do they?
No, interestingly, the trajectories have been completely separate.
Yeah.
The Girl Scouts are open. They've had a transgender scout join them, and from what I understand, they've not had any issues
No.
like we have had
This is
in the Boy
LCC
Scouts.
Radio, WLNZ, here at 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. Now, take a deep breath because I'm going to not play devil's advocate. I've not been a big fan of scouting. Let me tell you why. I don't like single-sex organizations because I find them inherently patriarchal and intolerant. What is the mission of the Boy Scouts, and why is it only for boys?
Interestingly enough, in most of the rest of the world, it is not single sex.
Let girls in. That'll solve the
Exactly.
problem.
So it's called the Boy Girl Scouts? Or?
It's in
the Scouts of America.
in
Yeah.
Canada, it's Scouts Canada.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
UK, it's co-ed. In Mexico, it is Scouts Mexico. We hosted a troop from Mexico for the Michigan International Camporee this summer, and it's fully inclusive. Scouts Mexico actually.
Let's go down to Grapevine. I'll be with you. I'll be bringing my own signs. Because I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? I mean, when I grew up, they said, come be a brownie. I said, I don't want to be a brownie. They pressured me into going to one meeting. They were busy like embroidering tea towels. Who cared? The only interesting stuff was going on with the Boy Scouts who were going out camping and having a good time and all. And I thought to
Snaring a
myself,
rabbit.
this is yet another bad deal. Well, I mean, how come we always get the bad deals?
I mean,
Women
I
can
have
be
to admit,
scoutmasters.
I was right where you were. I joined Bluebirds, which is, I think, the equivalent over there. And
Yeah. Campfire girls.
yeah, and it was just nothing like the scouting that my brother was doing, where they were going camping in the woods. That's what I wanted to do.
Really?
I dropped out of scouting and I lost interest completely
Yeah.
until my kids got involved, and I thought, this is my chance.
And if there's something magical about single sex, then why do they have female scoutmasters?
Well, actually, they didn't until fairly recently. In fact, Boy Scouts actually didn't have in Cub Scouts until 1967. The Cub Scout leader could only be a den mother, and it could only be a mother.
For the young Cub Scouts.
And in
Mhm.
67, they allowed men to be den leaders, and they changed the name. It was, I think, 1988 when they allowed women to assume leadership roles in Boy Scouts.
But interestingly, the only reason that the BSA gave for changing its 78-year-old policy was the cost of defending the ban. So it's not like they really wanted women to be actively involved. It was just sort of, okay, let's make the problem go away. And that's what
I
they did.
can't imagine that you were costing them any more than the groups are now. I mean, they've been getting a bad press as a result.
They really have.
I mean, it has led
They
to...
have the Supreme Court ruling in the Dale case behind them. So they've felt
I
that
see.
they've had the justification that they needed to keep on going in this way. But, as you know, lots of corporations have been pulling out funding. So it's become very expensive again for
Yeah.
them.
Where are most of the scout troops located geographically? You know?
Are they in the South, or is it
yes.
more of
I
a...
didn't want to lead the witness.
Yeah.
But I had a hunch that we're.
They're everywhere
I
in
just
the
know
country.
we were putting
Everywhere,
it was just a good guess, you know.
There's a
Urban Texas.
There's a significant number in the South and in the West, and every Mormon boy is automatically enrolled in Boy Scouts.
What? Really? It's part of church
It
membership?
is their
Yes.
youth program.
Oh, it's their youth program.
It is their youth program.
And do
yes.
they do the girls into Girl Scouts?
No.
No.
No, because the Girl Scouts are their Girl Scouts are way too radical.
Ah.
Yeah, they teach things like self-awareness and
Which is
self-identity.
construed as sex
and-
education.
Maybe we could just persuade the Girl Scouts to open their ranks. Guys could. No, I'm serious.
Actually,
because
they can't, because the way that it works is that in 1916, the BSA was issued a federal charter.
Yeah.
A few years later, the Girl Scouts were issued a federal charter. And the kind of right-wing keep the ban groups keep saying form your own group. We can't form our own group.
Because you could not get a federal
Because
charter?
there is one, World Organization says that only one, there can only be one organization per country, number one. And as soon as BSA got its federal charter, it bullied any other organization, similar organization that even used the word scout in its name to non-existence.
You know, it raises an interesting issue, though, because if the World Organization only recognizes one organization per country, in essence, it's recognizing two from the United States. So maybe you could persuade also, I'll get my cards and banners ready for this one, too. We can go to the World Organization, we can say, kick out those Boy Scouts and make it Girl Scouts and expand them.
The Belgians have tried to do that.
Have they?
Yes, they have.
Yeah? Oh, see, this
Just
is
because they make a
interesting.
lot of beer there.
Ah.
So, what do you think the odds at the annual convention are of this changing?
It's anybody's call at this point. The anti-gay folks have strength in numbers by virtue of the number of people who are involved from the Mormon Church, from the Southern Baptist Convention, and from other groups that feel that homosexuality is inconsistent with the values of scouting. But increasingly, we have more and more people coming out of the closet, so to speak, in support of getting rid of this ban, because there are so many churches and other people who cannot support discrimination any longer.
Well, that's what's sad too, because I remember that one Brownie meeting I went to was in a school. It wasn't in a church, and so I mean I don't know why it's over the years then it's made this shift away from schools and
because
to
of the
churches.
Dow versus BSA.
Oh, and so it's been that reason.
And it was when
the decision merely allows them to do that. It doesn't mandate.
It doesn't mandate it, but the BSA argued that it was a private organization.
I see.
And it went from, in 1916, when they were considered a duly constituted as a federal patriotic organization. They were not a private organization. Their charter doesn't speak to them as a private organization, to arguing in 2000 that they were a private organization and a private religious organization. So that really changed things and tipped kind of the scale away from the public schools, the Kiwanis clubs, and moved
They lived up to that
BSA
decision or that
into
pronouncement.
a much more church-based organization.
Well, I guess that's the reason they feel they can just discriminate against atheists with impunity, because I know atheists have been fairly militant about the idea that doesn't make sense either. See,
Well,
I don't see
that
much point nowadays in single-sex organizations. We see the YMCA, and when you look at their history, I mean, they used to have the separate facilities for men and women, and separate living facilities and separate workout facilities, and economically, it just became impossible, no longer viable economically for them to do that. And so now they've realized that they're a more modern organization. This organization seems to be moving backward.
Well, and it's not just atheists. It's maybe you can want to just explain about Jews, but about the Unitarians, which is really interesting.
We think of them as atheist light.
That's funny. The BSA has confidence in going forward with its anti-gay stance because, in effect, through the years, it's made it very difficult to be out in the open about your stance. If you are vocal,
Oh.
you get kicked out.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, we're risking.
So they would just kick you out for free speech? They would not just,
No, you're, well, in my
or you're too
troop,
militant?
Well, there's no. Because it's a private organization. You're essentially there's free speech.
There's no free
There's
speech.
no free speech in a private
Well, that's right.
organization.
They don't have to give you any reason. There's no hearing.
See, that's one of the problems,
So
I
tell me
think.
again why your kids belong to this organization.
Yeah.
There's some really, really positive things
Yes.
about it, and I think both. I come from a troop where, troops are essentially almost like a franchise. Yes, you have national out there telling you what to do, but just like any franchise, you can put your own individuality into it, and we
Can you openly violate the rules, though, without risking really getting kicked out?
quietly.
Quietly.
some troops have been successful, some councils have even been successful, but it's sort of arbitrary.
Now,
Sometimes
is there
they-
a state organization in this hierarchy, or does it only go from chapter to federal?
It goes from the unit level, which is your Cub Scout pack or your venturing crew or your Boy Scout troop, to a district, to a council, and then from there, there's a region and then national.
So who gets to vote?
On
Issues like that's coming up at the next meeting. Who will be the voting members?
There are 2 people from each council,
Okay.
and then there are a certain number of delegates based on the size of the council.
Do you feel
Unfortunately,
that
we
you
don't
don't
know
have
who all
the-
those people are.
Oh.
Yeah, and two of the councils have actually, in the last few weeks, come out in support of lifting the ban. The Nashua Valley Council in Massachusetts voted,
Diablo.
and the Mount Diablo, so I think it's Silverton.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny?
Which is really funny because the Mount Diablo is actually the council that kicked out Dal.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Yes, it
And
is.
they have now come full circle
It's California.
Can't
and
keep up, eh?
in support of lifting the ban. So, councils actually now are willing, much more, I think, willing to openly state that they are in support of lifting the ban. The Northern Star Council in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin has a long-standing tradition of stating that they are non-discriminatory. I think it's the Central New Jersey Council also has a.
But those are the coasts, the left coast and the
Yeah.
Well, and that's
eastern
basically.
seaboard. It's the heartland.
Well,
It's a
that's the
heartland.
argument by
Yeah.
a lot of the people that are against lifting the ban is that this is kind of a northern
Liberal,
liberal
elitist.
coast.
Yeah.
But interesting, the Mormon Church actually has not come out in defense of the ban, and Mitt Romney has actually come out in support of lifting the ban.
Really?
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean,
Was that when he was in I Am a Massachusetts Liberal, Romney, or was that?
That's when he was a Massachusetts Liberal Romney. Who knows what he'd do tomorrow,
So, let's be clear. Why doesn't the organization want to accept gays? What do they think bad's going to happen? I mean, let's be blunt.
They have stated that they don't think it's consistent with the values of scouting. Now, back in the Dale case, they used as an argument that it violates our oath that we take that we're morally straight.
Who knew that's what that
Yeah.
straight really meant?
Yeah. And they also say that in our law we say that we're clean, and they say that it violates that. And to me, that's kind of harkening back to a
It's insulting.
Levitical
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
purity
Yeah,
sort of
You
thing.
got to remember when the Boy Scouts was founded. Was what year again?
Yeah.
1910.
And where was it founded?
Well, in England,
Yes.
actually, and
So-
there's actually
But I mean, it's
within
those
England
things
they
were pretty common in that language.
Yeah. But I don't think that's what they intended back when
No,
they wrote
no,
the law.
absolutely not.
Well,
Oscar Wilde couldn't have gotten it.
No, scouting was intended to be open to all boys, to provide them this character education, prepare them to go forth and be productive citizens.
Yes, get them off the street. And, yeah.
This is
Exactly.
LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 on your dial. You're in Lansing, Michigan. Now, did the Scouts ever discriminate on the basis of race or ethnicity?
Yes.
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 So they have a checkered past to
Well,
begin with.
And it was 1974 when the last troop desegregated. It was in Old Hickory Council in Virginia. 1974.
And you have
Susan, I keep
Scouters-
telling you, the next thing I'm going to hear is you're joining the KKK because you're going to reform them from the inside.
Let me tell you, the more we read about this, I've learned more about the BSA in the past few weeks than I've ever known before, and I never realized just how sordid its past was. But I have to tell you, it is a worthwhile organization, and I don't know how to convey
They run
that.
summer camps.
Yes, they do. And they have nice, clean laundry.
This is so strange.
What they do for boys, I don't think boys can learn anywhere else.
Well, that is part of what bothers me because you're teaching a male hierarchical system. You're saying that girls are not part of the people who have leadership and the people who have mastery. And so to me, I think the greater issue is also making sure that girls are included because I just don't see the point.
Well,
if these things are so great,
No,
then let's have
Keep
both
in
sexes
mind, there is
involved.
the arm of scouting from age 14 to
21.
21 that is co-ed.
What is
but
that?
It's called Venture Scouting, and
Never heard of
Venturers
them.
are a co-ed group.
Are there
and
6 people in it? What? I mean, how come I've never heard of these people?
It's
Is
very
it small? Yeah.
Yeah.
at this point. It's relatively new.
I think in
In the
part,
grand scheme.
Is it in response to this, maybe?
it's actually fairly. It evolved from Explorer Scouts. Okay, as I mentioned, I was an Explorer Scout. That was back in the
A long time
70s.
ago.
It's a long time ago.
Did you read Boys Life back then?
I like scouting for boys.
I love Boys Life.
Explorer Scouts was actually career based, focused. I was in the medical explorer post at the local hospital. I got to see surgeries that I would never have gotten
Wow,
to
see,
see
that's cool.
otherwise. It was fully co-ed. My explorer post had to have 150 or more
Wow.
people
We should have
in
built
Scouts
that
in it. They changed, and I'm not really sure. I mean, I graduated high school, went off to college, you know, didn't continue in the Explorer post, but that later evolved to Venture Scouts. And like Andrea said, Venture Scouts is a co-ed.
Do you think, though, that they started Venture Scouts in response to the dwindling numbers as a way to recruit the older boys and retain them?
I think so.
Yeah, let's bring girls into it and maybe they'll stay with us.
Because really, the challenge is for the sexes to learn how to work together, collaborate, cooperate, and compete.
Well,
So,
and that was so wonderful about the International Camporee this summer. We had 4 scouts from Mexico staying with us for a week. It was an awesome experience. We've kept in contact with them. We actually had the whole troop of about 15 or so scouts and their leaders come up, and they stayed with various scouts. The kids did activities together, and then they all went off camping together.
So for international, like camporees and jamborees, they allow other countries to come here, even though they're not of the same moral standard as ours, I guess.
We camped with a troop from East Lansing. They hosted a group of scouts, co-ed scouts from Taiwan. In fact, all of the scouts that came over, including the one from Egypt, were co-ed.
that's bizarre.
We are
That is
so out
bizarre.
of the mainstream
Yeah.
of international. I did not
Can
know
you
that.
give me some statistics? I don't have any idea how many Boy Scouts there are, how many Girl Scouts, how many troop leaders. how many are male and female of the troop leaders? Because it seems to me that there are a lot of women who have moved into the ranks now of Boy Scouts, right?
I don't have any
I don't
statistics.
have-
No, but women are still in the minority.
Oh,
to
are
be
they?
sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
I
Yeah.
might be able
But
to give
while she's
you-
looking for a statistic, I just wanted to mention, I think part of the irony of talking about the co-ed scouting is that we do have co-ed scouting for 14 to 21-year-olds. It works just fine, and one of the big complaints about, oh, we can't have gays in scouting because how are we going to, you can't tent a gay boy with a straight boy or two gay boys together. Well, we have venture scouting. We have rules in place to deal with sexual
All of those
issues.
things, yeah.
We can just apply it to Boy Scouting as well, but they
In an era where we have abandoned Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and where the Supreme Court may be on the brink of really making a sea change and giving the LGBT community the civil rights status that they deserve, do you think that those decisions will sort of frighten the Scouts into realizing that the tide is turning against them, or are they still going to just hold on to a small sliver of the population that would resist?
I think they're realizing the tide is turning. There's a group out of Orlando, Florida called On My Honor, BSA. They are a group of very conservative Boy Scout leaders, male and female. It's interesting watching some of their posts on, because they have a Facebook group, and it's interesting watching their posts because they keep saying that there are homosexuals in scouting. It's just that they can't be open and avowed, which is actually what the scout rule is. So they're actually affirming that there are homosexuals in
Right.
scouting,
And that's not a
there
problem.
isn't a
and that's not a
problem.
problem.
But we just don't want them.
We don't want to acknowledge that they're
well,
all right.
and
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's really funny because it's kind of like we don't want homosexuality in our face, and it's like, well, okay, so it's okay to be open and avowed heterosexual,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that can be in your
Yeah.
face, and it's
All of those things are falling away as the generations that are moving into leadership. The young people, I think, are far more enlightened than some of the older groups. So I think over time it's inevitable this is going to
It's-
change.
yeah.
It's just unfortunate that kids have to be, in essence, bullied by an organization in the meanwhile, or told that they have to keep quiet about who they are.
and that's a really sad thing. And if you look at the Scout law and the commentary that goes with the Scout law, for instance, a Scout is courteous. In the handbook, it says a Scout is polite to people of all ages and positions. He understands that using good manners makes it easier for people to get along. A Scout is friendly. A Scout is a friend to to all. He is a brother to all other Scouts. He offers his friendship to people of all races, religions, and nations. So
Those are supposed to be the
these are-
scouting values.
These are the scouting
Yeah.
values.
And I think the key in that one is, and respects them, even if their beliefs and customs are different from his own.
See, that's
Yet we keep getting more and more homogeneous.
And this is why we have our boys in scouting, because this is where, yes, there's this history that really neither one of us knew about until we started reading a lot more about
Yeah.
the history.
Yeah.
But the leadership training that our boys get in scouting, the skills camping, the skills working with other scouts. My son's an Eagle Scout, but he's not leaving scouting. He goes back meeting after meeting because he sees the importance of being there to help the younger scouts learn. He doesn't have to be there. And that's the kind of ethics, the kind of moral
Sense of duty.
sense of duty that I think both of us think is important.
Well, I hope that you will come back and tell us about the vote. It's so good to hear
Yeah, I think
all of
this
this
would be-
history.
this
This has been
conversation should
fascinating.
continue. It's fascinating to me.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much to Susan Masson and Andrea Clausen. And when will that vote be?
It will be May
20th.
24th.
We'll
Yeah.
be talking to you in June. And
June,
find out
I would
what's
think we
on.
should.
Yes.
That sounds wonderful, and hopefully we can tell you how Dave did with his 1,400
Mile
mile
ride.
bike ride over the Rockies.
Snow.
I hope the weather is good for him all along the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to be joined now, and we're going to shift gears. In addition to the anime conference, the what is it? I got the Shudokan. That's what it's called, Shudokan. It's at the Lansing Center for 3 days. On Sunday, Ray Walsh. I wonder how your audience, how have they been coexisting with the anime people next door? Ray,
They're not scouts.
Ray, this is your 56th or 57th? Is it
Actually, this is our 57th show.
57th Michigan Antiquarian Book and Paper Show?
Yeah, we've been doing them twice a year for quite a while now.
And how do you get along with the people? If they get the wrong place, do you end up with people in?
Well,
Costume?
anybody that is a member of the Shudokan, we're offering them a $1 discount if they will decide to buy a ticket to the book show.
That's a good idea.
And
Cross
hopefully it'll be
fertilization.
the similar way for anybody that wants to attend the Shudokan from the book show.
Ah,
we may as well.
interesting. Yeah.
It should be an interesting combination. It's a strange weekend for book lovers and anime lovers.
It is, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, it's a full moon.
and it is
Oh,
also
good.
the kickoff.
No, that was
of-
last weekend.
I want to give Bill Castaneer his props for the hard work that he does every year, and he's found out. It's the third year, and he's growling
Fourth.
in the background. Fourth?
Yeah, wait, I missed a year. See how hard it is?
Wow.
This will be our fourth year.
It's an enormous amount of work that he puts into. April is National Poetry Month, and Bill committed, and lo, those many years ago, to run a poem a day. And that means figuring them out, selecting them, deciding on the order, what kind of artwork, figuring out how he's going to lay them out, which is often a challenge. Because poets want to do things like E.E. Cummings and run things up the side of the page.
You wouldn't believe the one I got today. I'm not going to talk about it because the person listens, but I don't think we can do it.
All the letters backward?
Almost.
Ah.
I don't think we
Do
can.
a haiku a day, you know.
But
Well,
we started
today
with a
we
haiku
started with a
today.
haiku.
Yeah.
We started with something
Yeah.
simple, a little dark. There was a few complaints I had.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Ah,
dead
interesting.
squirrels.
Squirrel lovers.
Yeah.
Little black squirrel lovers.
No, we just found in my barn where we store books occasionally, we found 2 nests of raccoons.
Ooh, not good.
No.
No.
Each of them still have their eyes closed, and we're trying to figure out what to do now. Challenges in the book world because they don't read and they have a tendency to poop all over.
And chew on the books, I
Yes,
think, for
that too.
amusement.
They like the bindings.
Yeah.
Well, you know, tonight we're joined again by Stephanie Glazer, who was the first poet in the first year.
Ah, that's what it was.
First
See,
poet,
I got
first year.
confused.
Yeah.
When
And I
it said
changed
first
that a little
poet.
bit.
Okay.
So I made it clear that she was the first poet in the inaugural year, and she did the Pat Robertson poem.
Which set a lot of people's hair on fire,
It did,
much more
right.
than the black squirrel.
right. That's
Probably true.
There was some more angst from that than there was about black squirrels.
Are your feelings towards Pat equally as passionate these days, or has he passed from the scene?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. You know, I think I was a little younger at the moment you're speaking to me in right now, and, you know, I wanted someone to hate, I suppose, but I really did hate him.
He
really
was a good
did.
choice, though.
Yes, I thought so.
If you're gonna hate someone,
Yeah. I mean, he believes that homosexuality brings hurricanes.
he probably doesn't allow scouting in his.
I'm sure.
Likely not.
Likely not. But Stephanie, you invited here tonight to read for us.
Right. She's going to read a poem, and then we'll get back to the book show. A shorter poem. I'm going to help direct her.
Less incendiary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could be incendiary.
Oh,
We
that's
just can't use
fine.
4-letter words in this.
That's
The
fine.
special kind.
Maybe 3-letter words.
Yeah.
3-letter words.
Or 2-letter
Ooh.
words.
But one of the things at the book sale, that there's dealers that bring quite a bit of poetry. Poetry is still very popular.
Everything from Robert Frost on up and down.
And Robert Frost spent 2 years in Michigan, at the University of Michigan.
I was looking the other day at a literary map, and I assumed they were going to show me where various authors had lived. No, it just showed me a word cloud of other authors they're related to. It's a
Oh.
different kind of literary map.
Yeah, I got you.
But with writingmitandlit.com, you're aware of almost all the authors' connections to Michigan.
Pretty much now. I mean, I still learn a few every year, but not many like I used to.
Well, April is the cruelest month, but not for poetry, right?
No, there's a lot happening this month with
Yeah?
poetry. Today, Poetry in Motion went up on
Oh, did it?
Cata buses. Yes, I took the bus here, actually, and saw a poem by Laura Kaziski.
Oh, cool.
Who'll be here when?
Who will be here April 10th, reading at the RCH Theater at 7 p.m. It's a Wednesday.
Laura's from the University of Michigan, and her book of poetry last year won the Book Critics Circle Award, right?
which is much acclaimed award.
That's a big deal for poets, isn't it? That
Yes,
might
it is.
be,
It is.
other than the Pulitzer or Nobel Prize.
That's sort of the ticket.
Yeah, that's the ticket.
And before her comes Leon Lee, just in a couple of days this Wednesday, who was born in Indonesia and is a Chinese exile. And we're very lucky to be having him here from Chicago. And he'll be reading this Wednesday the 3rd, again at 7 p.m. at the RCH Theater in the basement of Snyder Hall on MSU's campus. All of our events are free and open to the public, so both community and university folks are always invited. It's important for me for people to know that.
And RCH is Residential College in the Humanities,
In
right?
the arts and
So
humanities, that's
it's
right.
over there at Snyder Phillips in that area. And this is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We are talking to Stephanie Glazier and to Ray Walsh about all things literary, and with Bill Castanero of Mitten Lit. So, boy, it is a literary evening here. What have you chosen as your selection to read for us?
Sure. Well, Bill was nice enough to ask me to bring one of my own poems, and if you'll let me a little later on, I'd really love to read a short one of Leon Lee's too.
You can close with that.
Yeah, that'd
That
be
sounds
nice.
great. That sounds great. So thanks for letting me be here, sort of with both of my hats on, my arts administrator hat and my poet hat. I don't always get to do that. That's
Stephanie
special.
is the director of the Center for Poetry on campus.
And I chose a poem called My Brother Opens the Ground with Sky. It's a poem about my brother who did a couple of tours in the Iraq War and the experience of having him back and working through and living through his time there. My brother opens the ground with sky. The first tour, he was in armor. After some time, I understood this to mean he was the one who hands out the guns. And in my mind, I put him in a room with rows of weapons and lights, the air around him stale, but still. In letters from the second, I asked about Arabic, the beauty of it. He said nothing about the language and spoke only of the stars. So many, he said, you couldn't pick out a single formation. Now he pulls tanks of pressurized air back and forth over the mountains, and when he gets to where he's going, the air is breathed into water and channeled into the ground for oil. Are his dead alive in him now? The patter of road, the shale and blow. What I know is my brother is at the bottom of the sky in Colorado, having survived the world so far. I fear for him even the wind. Coming down those passes, the tonnage pressing, a turn of his hand, a broken rail, everything, the air, gone to flame.
Wow.
Mm.
That made me think a little bit about Kevin Powers in his book, The Yellowbirds is going to be the book, and that's about the Iraq War. So, I mean, there's a lot of literature coming out about that right now, so this fits in really nicely.
Nice imagery.
Thank
And
you.
it really is beautiful.
Thank you.
Ray, what convince someone to go to this book show? Convince Stephanie. Tell,
Stephanie's an easy sell.
Yeah,
I
she's an
really
easy
am,
sell.
but convince me anyway. I've
Well,
never actually been.
See,
We'll have to give you a ticket.
Convince that head of the Boy Scouts down in Texas.
That may be a little more challenging.
Yeah, daunting.
read.
Well, if you've never been to it, it's certainly a bit on the unusual side. About 65, 70 dealers from around the country and Canada setting up, selling all kinds of things you won't expect to find. Not necessarily just old books. There's everything from sheet music and old postcards.
They're really popular.
Football
postcards.
postcards are exceptionally popular right now. Football programs, movie posters, old magazines back to the 20s and earlier. You name it, and it's probably there. People having some original artwork and paintings there. A lot of prints. Just such a wide variety of things. It's a little bit mind-boggling. And the prices are not necessarily incredibly high, but it's not a flea market or a garage sale.
Okay.
The dealers are organized within themselves, but not necessarily at the show. In other words, we don't put all the postcard dealers together. We try to make it a good mixture, so it's kind of fun. And it's a concrete floor, so wear comfortable shoes. And not all dealers will take credit cards, but there's usually
that's good to know.
there's usually a money machine out in the
ATM I saw it,
ATM,
yeah.
So in the hallway, the show's located at the Lansing Center, 333 East Michigan Avenue, and it starts at 9:30 and goes until 5 o'clock on Sunday, April 7th. There is an admission fee, and they do charge for parking.
Well, I think one of the things that's nice about the show is you can spend all day there and not spend any money except the
Yeah.
admission fee.
True, yeah.
You don't have to buy anything, and you have a great time looking at books.
Oh, yeah, and there's snacks in the back. I always head straight to the
So
snacks.
we have a different hallway. We're in the same building, but because of Shudokan being there, we're kind of coexisting.
Interesting.
And so it's a little bit different this time. The layout will be a little bit unfamiliar, but in the current issue of City Pulse, there's a 4-page insert that has a map and listing about where all the dealers and who the dealers are and what they'll be bringing.
I think I'll replicate that on Lansing Online News as soon as I can as well. Yeah,
Sounds great. Thank
yeah,
you.
good.
Stephanie, you sent me something today about a program that Broad is going to do.
I did.
This is brand new.
It is. I think this is a really good example of the kind of collaboration and friction that I'm seeing and hoping to see more of happen between the Broad and other units on campus. And also, with the addition of the new Arts and Culture magazine and the campus public station Current State and the Broad, I think some exciting new collaborations are happening in the way of the arts at MSU and just in the community.
So there's a poet coming, and how are they going to tie them in?
So the event is
Several
called,
poets.
yeah, the event is called Patterns in Poetics, and a woman named Tammy Fortin, who's the program's curatorial person, is sort of hosting this event, and she's invited Brenda Ijima, Rob Helpburn from Eastern Michigan, and Diane Wilkowski, who's sort of here in the community, to read here, and I'm just going to be moderating with her a panel after, following their reading, on aesthetics, and we're going to ask them some open-ended questions about form, about the ways in which they felt fed or nourished or constrained by form or experiment in their own work and in their own trajectories, and how either form or experimentation has shaped their careers in aesthetics.
When will that be? Where?
It's April 13th.
Oh, it's coming right up.
Is that a Friday?
I'm sorry.
No, it's April 13th.
I believe that's a Saturday.
Saturday.
Ah,
And it's from 5 to 7 p.m.
Right.
At
At
the
the Broad.
That's
So they're
right.
they're mixing the art and poetry.
yeah, and they're doing movies there now and
Mhm.
all sorts of
They're
interesting
doing
things.
all sorts of things.
Yeah. We talked about this, by the way, and I'll have to give everybody a clue that it probably won't come up until maybe July or August on Comcast Channel 16 on the public media uh, session there. But Bill and Stephanie are featured in a video that I did looking at the closing of Morrill Hall with all the literary graffiti on the second floor. That was quite a day there. Very odd to be in that building when we're the only ones in it, and it's wheezing its last. Isn't
It was a lot of fun. After that taping, I was talking with a friend of mine. She's a faculty member in English. Her name's Kristen Renzi, and turns out that was her idea. She sort of walked
Was
into
it?
the office of the creative writing chair and said, "Yeah, how about we write on these walls?" And he said, "Okay."
It's a great
And so
idea.
and so it
Wonderful
was.
idea.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
so too.
We didn't get a chance to really do it justice. There's so much there. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah, it's when you
It
say
can't be
graffiti.
cataloged.
No, it really can't be cataloged. You'd spend hundreds and hundreds of hours to catalog it.
yeah,
But it would be an interesting thing to catalog.
it would.
But I don't see how it can possibly be done. It can't be saved.
No. That's why you better run down to the book show and gather all those papers.
We're
and
going to have
books
to
and-
find lots of different ways to show that video, because it was one of the coolest ideas I've ever seen on campus.
I think so too. I just like to see those kinds of creative ideas. Ray, I've got a question for you. Are the bulk of the people who come to the show, they're collectors who are doing this for monetary reasons, or people who are nostalgic about certain authors?
It's a combination. We get everything from the students at Michigan State and actually some from high schools and new collectors that people are not familiar with what's available. There's certainly people that are buying them for resale, and some people are trying to build their collections, looking for Hemingway first editions or Steinbecker, Faulkner, or manuscripts. But it's a wide cross section. It's really tough to categorize. We do get people driving, I say, or flying in from out of state or to just attend the show because it's the biggest one of its type in the Midwest.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't
The
it?
Chicago show I did last year had 22 dealers. We've got 3 times that.
That's
We've got
amazing.
almost 200 tables. So
Wow.
there's a lot of stuff to look at and absorb. It is a little bit overwhelming, but some of the stuff is really cool and neat. And it's not because we have a cross section of dealers. You don't know what you're going to find there, and that's part of the fun of it too.
Well, you know, Ray, I, of course, put my money into nice, safe investments like banks in Cyprus, but
I've been trying to convince people to buy Hemingway first editions and just hide them away.
I think that would be safer than the bank in Cyprus nowadays,
Mhm.
as we're learning. So those do tend to be good investments.
Well, I was going through a collection, my own collection of things that I had accumulated over the years. I'm slowly downsizing and found some books that I had bought back in 1978, and I had a little note in there that said, "This is worth $50." And the price here 35 years later has gone up considerably on things.
I'll bet.
It was a copy of Can Such Things Be by Ambrose Bierce,
Oh, wow.
and had a bookplate by H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh,
And
oh,
it has a signature
Wow.
of H.P. Lovecraft.
oh.
Tell our listeners who H.P.
Lovecraft is kind of the dean of American horror writers,
Yeah.
and he is considered on the same scale of Edgar Allan Poe. And the other interesting thing is that the book was a library book. There's a stencil on the front title page that belonged to New York Public Library.
Wow.
So I'm wondering if this is one that he actually took out from the library and never returned, because it's not withdrawn, and I'm hoping they don't want it back.
Somebody tell him.
I wouldn't tell that story on the radio, right?
Oops.
You know, and I started to say, Bugsy, speaking about library books are usually the ones you throw away, but some of the older libraries have got the most interesting plates within them that are collectors unto themselves.
Well, in the state of Michigan library last year disposed of
Oh,
100,000
they
books
did,
in an
didn't
auction.
they? Yeah.
So that was another unusual and kind of sad situation.
Did you go down there and take a look?
Oh, I did. And
Yeah.
we actually bid and won some of the lots. Got Greek literature and also the Pacific Islands. So
Did they scan any of that before they dumped it, or did they just dump it?
they basically offered it for public sale on a limited basis. They kept the Michigan material, they kept the genealogy, and they did not advertise it as well as probably could have been. And they put them in huge lots. So in some cases, in order to buy, in particular, like the art books, you'd have to buy 4,000 art books. Well, the general public doesn't have the chance to do that, and most dealers don't have the room to.
I was going to say, where would you even store them?
That's the problem. So
They didn't really understand the marketplace.
No.
So
no.
Or ask
it was more
advice.
challenging. They did a good job with what they had, but they didn't want to break it down at anything smaller and move it off to where the general public would have to bid on it. They could have, because they do that with the salvage and surplus stuff. But
We spent a lot of time when we were walking those halls of Morrill Hall talking about how ephemeral the walls were going to be, and how it's nice to be able to hang on to some of this stuff, but on the other hand, some of it you just have to let go, I guess.
well, you have to remember that some authors like Jim Harrison and various other people wandered those halls.
Oh, yeah, and we've
Oh,
got some
yeah.
good quotes from Jim Harrison and Richard Ford about it.
Yeah,
The place drove them crazy.
yeah. And we found out that it was a dorm before, and the closets were used for fun things on occasion. They had larger.
They were
than
large
normal
closets.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an all women's dorm when it was first built. It was
And who was it that wanted a little privacy with
Tom
some?
McGuane.
Ah, okay, all
He
right.
doesn't like to talk about that because he's a family man now.
Well, we've outed him, I guess.
Stephanie, what other events are you've got your poetry chalking event? Let's just mention that because that's several years old now too.
Yeah, thanks. You know, that was actually the first event that we did when the center opened in the fall of 2007, and it's an event I designed, and I'm fairly proud of it. It's meant to call attention to what is sort of colloquially known on MSU's campus as the Rape Trail. And it's really an event to sort of re-articulate that space as one of the most beautiful places on our campus, but also to ask questions to students about what that kind of language does to our environment and what it does to us in those environments. So at this event, we hand out poems that are wrapped around, children's pieces of sidewalk chalk to passersby, and those passersby are invited to copy those poems and pieces of art out onto the sidewalk on the river trail as a way to sort of inhabit the space peacefully and beautifully.
Tell us the history of that trail. How did that become known as the Rape Trail?
That's a good question. It's really just folklore. It's been known as that for as long as I've been here. I've been here 10 years, and some professors I've had who've been here 30 years have known it by that name. So really, it's just, I think, a fraternity.
Because, the reality, of course, is that it is not the stranger hiding in the bushes on the trail.
Of course,
It
those
is
things
the
happen in
acquaintance.
dorm rooms.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I
And
was
we
just
both get
wondering.
drunk.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. You were going to read a poem for us.
Yes.
Sure. One of Lee Young Lee's poems?
Yes.
I'd love to.
He is going to be here
He is going to be here on Wednesday evening.
2 days from now.
On Wednesday evening. I brought two little poems, but I'm going to read you an excerpt of one of his longer poems. And this is the bit of his that I know and love the best. And I also want to say that at our readings, there are letterpress broadsides given away for free to people who come. And this portion that I'm going to read to you will be the broadside.
We will close with that, so we will say thank you to Stephanie Glazer and to Ray Walsh. Don't forget the Michigan Antiquarian Book Show at the Lansing Center on Sunday. And Stephanie, you'll read for us now.
This is from The City in Which I Love You by Lee Young Lee. The shadows under my arms, I promise, are tender. The shadows under my face do not calculate, but come, smooth other, rough sister. Yet how will you know me among the captives? My hair grown long, my blood motley, my ways trespassed upon. In the uproar, the confusion of accents and inflections, how will you hear me when I open my mouth? Look for me, one of the drab population under fissured edifices, fractured artifices, make my various names flock overhead. I will follow you. Hew me to your beauty.
Thank you very much. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. Come back next Monday for Lansing Online News Radio. I hope Bill didn't cut us off. I don't think he did.